Hello all, welcome to Ranjana's Academy. Today I'm going to take the topic biomolecules. In that I'm going to take the concept of proteins. Let's get started. Proteins is a Greek word. Okay, so it's derived from the word proteos, which means primary source of food, which is needed for the growth and maintenance of body. So this is the most abundant biomolecules which is found on the earth's surface, and the chief producers for these are milks, peanut, cheese, pulses, fish and meat. So all proteins are polymers of alpha amino acids. Okay. Now, amino acid is a derivative of a base and an acid, that is NH2 group and a COOH group. So depending upon the relative position of amino group, we have four categories, that is alpha, beta, gamma and delta. So alpha group alone has a speciality that it can be obtained by the hydrolysis of proteins. So this is derived from the trivial name. Okay, so it's derived from the property of compound or its source. Okay, so what do you mean by this? Let's go for an example like glycine. Glycine is derived from the Greek word glykos, which means sweet. This is a source, isn't it? Now you come for tyrosine. Tyros is derived from, it is again a Greek word. So what is the meaning of it? Cheese. So it is its source, and sweet is its property of the compound. Okay, fine. Now there are 20 important amino acids which you have to know. So let's starting from the first one: glycine, alanine, valine, leucine, isoleucine, arginine, lysine, glutamic acid, aspartic acid, glutamine. The next 10 are asparagine, threonine, serine, cysteine, methionine, phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, histidine and proline. Now, you might ask me a question. Why is few of those highlighted? I will tell you why is it. Before that, understand the structure of amino acid. Look here. This is the structure of amino acid. You have a COOH, R group, NH2 and H. So to understand why a few compounds out of which were underlined, you have to understand two different terms, essential and non-essential. What do you mean by that? Essential amino acids are those which cannot be synthesized by our body, which means that our body is not capable of synthesizing these amino acids. So they are essential because you require them, okay, from external source. Now, what is non-essential ones? These can be prepared by our body. That's it. Simple. So any one you have to memorize to distinguish between both of them. So I am going to teach you how to memorize essential amino acids with a simple, beautiful trick. And here goes the trick. The hill PM Watt. What is this? There is a PM whose name is Watt and he is going on to a hill. Easy? Was it easy for you? Now, what is the meaning over here? Expand them. This is a mnemonic, students. Expand them. What does H stand for? Histidine. What does I stand for? Isoleucine. Repeat after me. What does L stand for? Lysine. What does another L stand for? Leucine. What does P stand for? Phenylalanine. What does M stand for? Methionine. What does V stand for? Valine. What does A stand for? Arginine. What does T stand for? Threonine. And what does the other T stand for? Tryptophan. Okay, so histidine, isoleucine, lysine, leucine, phenylalanine, methionine, valine, arginine, threonine, tryptophan. Is it okay? So this is the trick to understand all essential amino acids. I hope this was very clear for you. Now let us go for the next concept. Classification of amino acids. Amino acids can be classified into three broad categories: acidic, basic and neutral amino acid. Say usually amino acid is a mixture of NH2 group and a COOH group. So simply to say, when you have acidic group more in a amino acid, it is classified under acidic. That means that carboxyl group is more. Okay, when amino group is more, it is basic. When both are in equal amounts, it is neutral. So it is very easy to understand acidic, basic and neutral amino acids. Now, what is the properties of amino acid? Property of amino acid is they are first of all colorless, students. You have to understand they are colorless. They are colorless. They are crystalline. They are water soluble. They have high melting solids and they behave as salts. Why do they behave as salts? Because they have a group of acid and a base. Fine. So in aqueous state, what happens is, this is one important point you have to know. Okay, in aqueous state, this carboxyl group will lose a proton and this amino acid group accepts it because this is an donor acceptor and that is a donor releaser, or it is a donor. Okay, so it is an electron donor. So this is going to lose a proton and that is going to accept it. So it is going to become dipolar in nature and amphoteric in nature such that it answers both acidic and basic. So this is called as Zwitter-ion. I repeat, this condition is called as Zwitter-ion. Okay, so all Zwitter ions are optically active except for glycine. Except for glycine, all others are optically active. Okay, fine. All others are optically active. So alpha carbon atoms are asymmetric in nature. So you have L configuration and D configuration, out of which L is the most common. Structure of proteins. Proteins are connected to each other by peptide bonds or peptide linkage. So these peptide bonds can also be said as amides. Okay, so they are attached closer to each other through peptide bonds or peptide linkage. Okay. Now, carboxyl group of one amino acid plus amino group of one amino acid, both of them will combine to give us a dipeptide. What is this? This is a dipeptide. Fine. So glycine plus alanine gives a glycyl and align. This is one example. So if 3 are present, tripeptide, 4 tetrapeptide, 5 pentapeptide, 6 hexapeptide. If more than 10 is present, it is polypeptides. So a polypeptide with more than 100 amino acid residues will result you into a protein. So the molecular formula condition is also there. That is, it has to be more than 10,000 U's. Fine. So the note you have to understand here is insulin has 51 amino acids. Insulin has 51 amino acids in it. Okay, but is it a protein? The next question comes. One exception, this is also a protein, right? So because it has less than 100 amino acids, this is an exception. So I hope the structure of proteins is clear for you. It's very simple. You have a carboxyl group and an amino group. So you have a dipeptide bond. So how many other bonds you have such like that? With that basis, you will be classifying it into different categories. If it is more than 10, it is polypeptides, and if it is having more than 100, it directly comes into the category of proteins. Right. Now, let us understand what is the different two types of proteins. Okay, so what basis they are using here? On the basis of molecular shape, we are going to classify them into fibrous and globular proteins. So fibrous proteins are those where the polypeptide chains run parallel. They want to be parallel, not such that it has to be straight. It can be anyways. It can even be like this, but it is going to go parallel. It's not going to meet anywhere. It's parallel, right? So they run parallel and are held together through hydrogen bonds. They are attached together by what bond? Hydrogen bond, H bond. Okay, between them they have a H bond. Can you see this? Between them they have a H bond. Okay, so H bond and a disulfide bond. So if you see this carefully, they look like a fiber. They have a fiber-like structure. That is the reason they are called as fibrous proteins. And these are usually insoluble in water. What do you mean by insoluble in water? If you add them to water, they will not dissolve completely. They will be as residues. So example is keratin. Okay, if you take your hair, a piece of hair and dissolve it in water, even though you give constant stirring, it is not going to dissolve. Yes, hair, wool, silk, all these are examples. And then in myosin, muscles. Muscles are an example of myosin. This is also a protein. It is present in the muscles. Okay. Now, globular proteins. This is the second category. Polypeptide chains coil and give a spherical shape. That is called as globular proteins. So, these are usually soluble in water. Example is insulin and albumin. Okay, so these are polypeptide chain coil. They will coil. Okay, these chains will coil to give a spherical kind of structure, and that is your globular proteins. And these are soluble in water, and the examples are insulin and albumin. The structure and shape of proteins, on the basis of this, you can classify them into 4 categories: primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. Okay, now let us see one by one each. Each polypeptide chain in a protein has amino acids linked with each other in a specific sequence, and this one is called as your primary one. What is this? This is your primary polypeptide chain. Then what is your secondary polypeptide chain? This is a polypeptide where it exists in 2 different structures, that is alpha helix and beta pleated. What is this? Before going on to this, let us understand what is the secondary polypeptide chain. Regular foldings of the backbone of polypeptide chain due to hydrogen bonding between C double bond O and NH groups is called as secondary polypeptide chains. Understood? See, these are regular foldings of the backbone of polypeptide chains. Okay, due to what? Hydrogen bonding between the carboxyl group and the amino group. Is it okay? So what is that? Secondary structure are regular foldings. Paka. Now what is this? Tertiary polypeptide chain. Tertiary polypeptide chain is overall foldings of polypeptide chains. There's going to be an overall foldings, and the main forces are hydrogen bonds, disulfide bonds, van der Waals bonds, and electrostatic bonds. Fine. So let us see what is quaternary subunits. What is quaternary polypeptides? To understand this, you have to understand the word, meaning of the word subunits. These are 2 or more polypeptide chains. Okay, when 2 or more polypeptide chains are present, we call them as subunits. So what is the definition of this quaternary polypeptide? The spatial arrangement of these subunits with respect to each other is quaternary structure. What is it? The spatial arrangement of these subunits is called as quaternary structure. Now let us see the 2 types of polypeptides. One is your alpha helix and the other one is your beta pleated. What is alpha helix? This is in the structure of helix, which is like a right-handed screw. Okay. Yes. So NH group of amino acid hydrogen bonded to carboxyl group to adjacent turns is called as alpha helix. So what will happen? It looks like a screw. Just see, it is going to be adjacent turns. So it's going to coil itself like in a screw shape. It's going to look like a helical structure. So it's called as alpha helix. What is beta pleated? All peptide chains are stretched out to nearly maximum extension. How far you can stretch a rubber band, just try it. Likewise, you're going to stretch this polypeptide chain as far as you can, and you're going to lay them down side by side like this and like this, like this, like this. So you're going to crisscross them, not cross them, you're not going to overlap them, but you're going to elongate and you're going to change the direction side by side of it. So this is same as like a pleating. Okay, in your drapery you pleat, right? Likewise. So this is called as beta pleated polypeptide chains. Okay, so students, while watching the video, kindly make notes, prepare your own notes from the slides, because all these are taken up from your NCERT. Okay, very important in all perspectives, maybe your competitive exams or even your board preparations. Okay, now let us see the last topic for today, that is denaturation of proteins. Proteins with unique 3D structure and biological activity are called as native proteins. What are they? Proteins with unique 3D structure and biological activity are called as native proteins. So they are going to be different. They have a 3D structure and they have a different biological activity, so they are native. Now, when a protein in its native form is subjected to a physical change or a chemical change. What is a physical change? Like that of your change in temperature. Or what is your chemical change? Like that of your change in your pH. the hydrogen bonds are going to get disturbed. The hydrogen bonds will get disturbed. So as a result, what happens? There is going to be the process of denaturation of proteins because their nature is lost. Okay, they are going to get denatured. Okay, so due to this, globules unfold. What happens to it? Globules will start to unfold and the helix gets uncoiled. If the helix is like this, it's going to get uncoiled like this, and the protein loses its biological activity. So I told you your native protein means it has a 3D structure, but it has lost its 3D structure. It has a biological activity, but it has lost its biological activity, which means that its property, its nature has been denatured. Okay, so secondary and tertiary structures gets destroyed and only primary structure will remain intact. Okay, so what is this in our everyday life? Where do we see this? Well, coagulation of egg takes place. Egg white will coagulate on boiling. Okay, if you boil your egg, you can see the coagulation of egg white. This is an example of denaturation of proteins. And also in your curdling of milk, which is done by a bacteria, here also a denaturation of proteins takes place. I hope you all have understood today's concepts clearly. If you had, give a like to this video, subscribe to our channel and share it with all your friends. Thank you.